Data from Remita shows the tech funding landscape in Nigeria this year has largely underperformed as the African tech ecosystem records a 35% year-on-year drop in foreign investment. DeRemi Atanda, Managing Director at Remita, joins me now live in our Lagos studio to unpack the report and the outlook for the African tech ecosystem going forward into the year 2024. Mr. Atanda, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, David.
Now, let's start off our conversation really now looking at your overview of the year 2023. And according to data we have here, what's the driver of this dip we're seeing in investment flows to Africa's fintech space?
Yes, thank you. You'll recall that in the previous years, the investment in the African fintech space had been on the ascendancy. 2023 has been a particularly challenging year, not just for Africa, but globally. There have been many disruptions, and investors are actually hedging their bets. Particularly in Nigeria, it's been an election year, some bit of instability in terms of predicting outcomes. And then we've had the devaluation of the currency, in a sense, that's made investors slow down a bit, especially when it comes to taking the money out of this environment. But that dip is not expected to last. I think it's just reaction to immediate market environments. And the fintech space continues to be attractive. And that's also opening up opportunities for local funding, by the way, because that's just a measure of the foreign component of investment. And if you look at the component of local funding into the fintech space in Africa, it's growing. So it's not as bad as it looks. You're right. But then that's beginning to happen.
Okay, let's talk about the big successes or opportunities that we have here. No doubt the youthful demographic we even have here in Nigeria poses opportunities. We've seen the digital solutions uptake here also take a big pace. But for me now, conversations around driving infrastructure is what would also help catalyze or scale these digital solutions. But from your own perspective now, financing is key. When we're looking at payment infrastructure, for example, how much of flows do you think would likely come in? Your outlook for the sector?
Well, if you say the outlook for the sector, I imagine you're talking 2024 now.
Yes, 2024.
Unfortunately, there's no crystal ball here.
Not at all.
Well, we can ride on the back of what we've seen so far.
Yes.
I think we're having stronger players in the market who are beginning to hold their own in the face of economic disruptions. And I think that's going to continue, not just in Nigeria, but across the African continent.
Yes.
In the face of the economic challenges, they've been there. The other thing we've seen is quite a number of solutions are coming out from Africa to drive financial transactions in Africa. And that in itself gives confidence that that can only be on a positive growth. And like I said earlier, if things remain a bit unstable in terms of foreign investors, the local investors are beginning to rise.
I'd like us to leverage on that, especially localizing this capital raise we're looking at here, crowdfunding from retail investors and also exploring the capital market as well. We had the listing of the NGX tech board as well. Now, for you, how is Remita also leveraging these opportunities, and also your take on how we can also increase the amount of flows or participation from local investors?
Yes, thanks. I'll take that in two ways. One is to look at the general environment, the flows into fintech in this local environment, Nigeria and then Africa. You just mentioned the tech board of the NGX. That's supposed to sensitize local investors to the opportunities in tech. And information is key. Quite a number of people before now are just being fixated, as it were, on other sectors of the economy. And that's why the early investors in fintech had been foreign investors in Nigeria and other African countries. But a lot more people are now getting involved, and that's one wonderful job NGX is doing to make the local investors aware of the opportunities here and the flows there. And just take it back. How did this start? If you remember, in 2011, we had the Lagos Angel Investors Network, Tome Davis. In 2015, you had the African Angel Investor Network, about 33 countries now. So that gives an idea of what's going on, and that's going to continue. And so for the opportunities that are here, when I say in two ways, startups, those who are just coming on board, one of the things is many people aren't even aware of the access to funding locally. Many people are so fixated on foreign inflows for investments in their businesses, but now they need to get to be more aware. I think about 2 weeks ago, there was an African startup festival that was giving ideas to local startups, the opportunities, myriad of opportunities. And when you talk about luck, it's just preparation, meeting opportunity. many people who are angling for funds are many times not so prepared for it. And one of the things we're doing is we're creating, like within our business, some startup framework to say the experiences we've had over time, want to share with startups. How do you get prepared for funding opportunities? So two things, it's like you're looking for the best school to attend. How do you prepare? You must look for information. Getting the information, the next thing is how do you cross order to get in there? For any investor to take you seriously, you must be aware of the environment. You must be familiar with corporate governance issues.
Yeah.
You must have ideas that are bankable, not things other people have done before. Quite a number of people sit in their rooms and they have a brainwave and they think they're just going to walk to the bank. The second bit is for the matured and maturing fintechs. What's the next phase? They're going to deepen what they're currently doing, and that may necessarily warrant some attraction of funds.
We, the producers are saying we have to wrap up the conversation, but now let's bring into focus budgetary allocations. Really now what we expect in terms of the financial flows or the support or willpower would also get from government now. The conversation is around having a regulatory or business environment that supports these tech startups. And we know tech is at the heart of all of our solutions. You look at edutech, agri-tech, literally health tech, everywhere. But for you now to tap into the disruptions that we expect and also internet penetration, financial literacy, how do we set the trajectory near term?
Thank you for that, David. One of the things I'm excited about is we have a minister of communication, innovation, and digital economy who's walked this path before and who's demonstrated in the few months that he's been there that we're on a journey, not just of talk, but to walk it. And if you've seen the policy documents that currently everyone is taking a bearing from, it's quite practical. It's what the industry can relate with. And I'm very confident that that's something we'll be able to leverage as a country to move into the next phase in terms of what happens to the fintech environment and just the general technology environment. Infrastructure will be something the government will need to open up more to the private sector in terms of financing. And you recall the central bank governor just talked about our plans to become a $10 trillion economy. If we must do that, financial institutions will need to be recapitalized. And that becomes sources of funding right from within here for the tech environment. The opportunities continue to be there. We talked about financial inclusion before now. It now becomes economic inclusion. A number of people are having access to digital channels. The next thing is how do you stimulate those digital channels to generate capital and create businesses? And it's also a function of internet penetration, talking about infrastructure. And you can see quite a number of things are happening, and we have measurable things. If you go through that policy document, you see the measurable things. How many kilometers of fiber do you want to deliver at this point? New virtual network operators, about 5 of them have been approved. So all of these things I think are in line. We just need to back it up effectively. The private sector must have a voice that holds government accountable. On the last note, many people are unaware of Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which is the investment arm of government, and it has in its custody billions of dollars of investment. It is time to begin to ask, when will Nigeria as an entity begin to take a stake in critical national infrastructure as a profitable venture, not to us operators? That demonstrates to the international community that we're ready for the talk. If you look at Singapore and the Sovereign Wealth Fund and what they control, they started about the same time with Nigeria, but look at the size of the fund they control.
And for payment systems, what should we expect?
For payment systems, you recall we have a National Payment System Vision 2025. It used to be 2020. Quite a number of things are ongoing. So in payments, we're going to have open banking is going to be a disruption we're going to look at. A lot of people are looking at that. You're having a lot more APIs, a lot more of collaboration within industry. And so it's going to be a real play. More importantly, we're going to be able to onboard a number of people that are not yet digital inclined for payments. One way of doing that is converting merchants and payment points, a lot more of them, to digital touch points, which is one area where we're playing collaboratively to ensure that financial services distribution is a reality in 2024.
It's no longer business as usual. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, Mr. DeRemi. I've been speaking with DeRemi Atanda, the Managing Director at Remita.